All right, hello, Dr. Maya Ziegler of Monarch Family Chiropractic, and welcome to tonight's workshop on our wellness journey. Now, I think with this topic, we could go many ways with it, so it's going to be fun to dive into what I've prepared for you today. And before we do, I just want to take a moment and thank you for showing up today. There's a lot of things that we could all be doing at a 5:45 on a Tuesday night, and you are showing up with me for the next 30 minutes to talk about things related to your health. And I really think it is honorable to show up in this way because not everyone is making the decisions and choices that you are in your health as it relates to your chiropractic care, and then adding in these other pieces that will create a more well-rounded, more multifaceted journey as it relates to your wellness. So with that, let's get started here. So I first wanted to define our wellness journey. So I went straight to, dictionary.com and said, well, what does wellness mean? And these were the two definitions that popped up. The first was the quality or state of being healthy in body and mind, especially as the result of deliberate effort. I love that, deliberate effort. Okay, keep that in mind. Second one was an approach to healthcare that emphasizes preventing illness and prolonging life, as opposed to emphasizing treating diseases. So if we just think about wellness, right? Personally, what is my wellness journey or your wellness journey through the lens of how can I have a healthy body and mind, understanding that it requires deliberate work, it requires responsibility, it requires something different, right, than our typical healthcare model that is emphasizing just the treatment of disease, right? This is really how do you prolong life in a very deliberate effort to create body and mind health or wellness. And when we dive into journey, I love this, the passage or progress from one stage to another. It is a journey. I love that quote that says, life is a journey, not a destination, right? You don't want to just get from one place to another. There is a journey involved, and that experience in that journey is what shapes you, right? What supports your growth and evolution in many ways. And so I always like to just sit with this question: when does the wellness journey begin? Because a lot of us think, well, my wellness journey began when I started really being deliberate in my choices and in my effort to being healthier, being more mindful with the foods I was eating or how I was moving my body. I think a lot of people think their wellness journey begins when they are intentional and have awareness, when in actuality, we are all in our wellness journey. And it starts, I'm going to present some research today. I actually see that wellness starts preconception, right? The wellness and health of generations to come start with the choices that we're making today. And so we are accumulation of every stress we've ever been under every choice we've made. We are cumulative input of that and how we are today. And the more intentional we are with those choices, the more deliberate we are in the lens of health and body and mind, the more we move to, health as opposed to disease. Okay. So when does your wellness journey begin? Well, it began a long time ago, but you just may be more intentional now or in the last 5 years or the last 30 years, whatever it may be. So I want to show you this. When I said health, your wellness journey began at preconception. So I had a story here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but there was an ice storm in Canada in 1998. and it was considered the worst natural disaster in Canada's history. There was something like, it was 9 or 10 days. I'm really sad I can't find that right now. It's worth it for me to give you these details. Here it is. Okay. So it was between January 4th and January 10th of 1998. And the area received up to 100 millimeters of ice pellets and freezing rain, more than double the icy precipitation normally received in those areas in a whole year. The storm claimed as many as 35 lives, injured 945, and resulted in temporary displacement of 600,000 people. Roads were shut down, massive power outages occurred, cutting off electricity for nearly 1.4 million customers in Quebec and over 230,000 in Eastern Ontario. The total financial cost is estimated to be $5.4 billion. So this was a massive ice storm that happened over a 6-day period. And what they did here in this study is they wanted to look at those women who were pregnant during this national disaster, during this natural disaster, and under prematernal stress. How did that affect their kiddos when they were born 5 years down the road? Okay. And they really wanted to look at linguistic function, cognitive function in 5.5-year-olds. And this is what they found. Prenatal exposure to this moderately severe natural disaster associated with lower cognitive and language abilities at 5.5 years of age. I want you to sit with that. We had nothing to do with that, right? If this was our mom, we had nothing to do with that. It was how our moms perceived and processed stress in our world that directly impacted our developing brain and body. And sit with that, because think about what we've just been through in the last 2 years, 2+ years, March of 2020. So last month, brought us 2 years into COVID. They talk about all these COVID babies that were born in this time frame. What kind of maternal stress were these moms under? And how is that going to impact the growth and health of and trajectory that they are on in terms of what they could experience and their potential later on in life? We have no idea, right? And so when we talk about wellness journey, understand that you may be already have children, you may be thinking about having kids at some point. You may not even be a woman, right? But your choices impact generations to come. We can talk about our health, or we can even talk about the environment, right? The choices we make in terms of the environment, how that could impact the future generations. So this wellness journey, you can think about it in terms of body, health, and mind. You can think about all sorts of scenarios. But I found this to be fascinating because they're seeing cognitive and language challenges when their moms were under prenatal stress during that period. And all the more reason that how can we make sure those kiddos get the support they need to experience a higher level of health? So continuing on here, this is a study, experience-driven brain plasticity beyond the synapse. So I want you to think about your brain. Your brain is made up of billions and billions of neurons. It's hard to imagine billions of neurons. But I want you to think about a neuron as like an oak tree, right? You have an oak tree that has a vast root system and a vast branch system. And so you've got these neurons that fire, and one oak tree, boom, can fire to hundreds of thousands of other neurons simultaneously within a millisecond. And you've got hundreds of thousands of neurons firing all the time so that we can function and adapt and respond to our world, right? And it's not all conscious. It's a lot of it, 90% of it is something we don't even need to think about, so that our heart beats and our lungs breathe and expand, and smooth muscle expands to get blood to all the areas, and enzymes are secreted, hormones are secreted, right? We've got lots happening here. Our brain is remarkable and responsive in how it interacts and interprets our world. And it is fascinating to look at how the brain interacts with our environment. And what this study found is the brain is remarkably responsive to its interactions with the environment, and its morphology is altered by experience in measurable ways. And I want you to think about morphology as if you've heard of the term neuroplasticity. It is a brain that is malleable and responsive, and neurons start firing to other areas and branching to other areas of the brain when we learn new experiences and do new things. And so I bring this up because, again, starting off, our wellness journey started off preconception and how we grew in mom's, belly impacted what we could potentially experience in terms of our trajectory that we're on. Now we have a new kiddo in life where their brain is developing, and they say the first 1,000 days of life are critical, right? If some of those brain development pieces don't take place in those first 1,000 years, they say sometimes that can't even happen again, right? And so in development of our brain, development is driven by our environment. So everything coming in, if we alter that environment, we alter how we develop. And if we talk about this in terms of the chiropractic component, subluxation, those malalignments in our spine, alter that information going in, which alters how we perceive and process our world. And I'm going to go here for a second because I want to just take a step back. A lot of you have seen this sheet here, this, the effects of subluxation. And one of the ways we simply describe the body is through a safety pin cycle. We love to describe this when we're talking to kiddos, because most people have seen a safety pin, right? And I want you to think of this top portion of the safety pin as your brain. And the way the brain is talking to the body is through your nerve system. So you've got information going into, oops, let me go back. I don't know how I did that. You've got information going into the brain, which is called afferent signaling. And you have information going out of the brain, which is efferent or motor signaling. And you talk to anybody who is in the medical field and they understand this neurofeedback loop of information in, information out, right? Information in, motor response out. And so when we talk about how we alter our environment, how it can alter our brain development and our brain function is simply through the safety pin. So think about this. The way our brain gets its information is through all sensory input. Our visual system is huge for that. What we see, our brain always wants to keep our eyes level to the horizon. So it will compensate and make changes with our structure and body as long as our eyes are staying level. It doesn't matter what's going on down here because this visual input is huge for the brain. Oftentimes we say what's going on with the eyes is a window into the brain. So visual input, but also movement is huge in how we move our bodies, okay? And so if we have postural distortions, right? If we've taken on a specific pattern because we do things one-sided because we're heavily right-handed, or we're always golfing, or doing repetitive motions in one way with a mouse, right? We always got a monitor on one side. We always go to one side. If we have motor vehicle accidents or falls, if we have a high chemical exposure related to the foods we eat or what we're exposed to when we're outside breathing in air, or if we have an emotional stress, that all alters information going in. So our brain and the sensory input can be impacted and altered. And if it's poor information going in, that means our brain has poor information to base off, how we're processing our world. So the motor output is not great. And so this simple chart, which I love, shows you that at each of these segments, what those primary and secondary functions are, tissues, organs, glands that carry out those functions, and possible symptoms we could be experiencing with stress to that brain. And this column here, this effects column, this is what our brain uses in terms of symptoms to tell us what's going on. And they are not a bad thing. They are just a check engine light, so to speak. And so if there's any stress to how the brain interprets our world and processes our world, our brain has to tell us some way. And a lot of times we live in a healthcare system and a culture opposite of wellness, right? We live in a world, in a culture that wants to treat the symptom and treat the symptom alone because the symptom is bad. And if we have a symptom, something's wrong. If we don't, we're good. But there's a vast, it's like the tip of the iceberg. There is much more going on with the body than how we feel. And so again, when we look at the chiropractic component of making sure this loop is continually talking to, brain body in a very healthy, non-interfered way, we have a higher expression of health. Just like if we have that subluxation, we have that open safety pin, that impacts information going in or information going out. It still happens because our brain is magnificent, intelligent, highly adaptable, and yet it slows things down. And so going back to this study here, this is mainstream research that reinforces the chiropractic healthcare model of reconnect the brain to the body, allow the brain to better respond and coordinate and organize so that it can better respond and adapt to what's going on in our world. And I'll tell you, I talk about this because as our brain is developing, if there's any postural distortions, if we see a child who has, a head tilt and their brain is developing with this head tilt, that'll significantly alter how their brain moves through development and really the potential that it has to adapt and respond, if that makes any sense. So again, all along the journey in terms of wellness, the chiropractic lens is how can we support somebody experiencing a higher level of health and health expression by making sure a body moves through appropriate development, normal, healthy function. And yet we live in a world that, is okay with just treating the symptom. And so wellness isn't even a word. Feeling good, feeling fine, numbing, not feeling anything at all, being disconnected from your body, that's normal. Because that's what we do with the treatment of symptoms. And I like to share this because let me share a different screen here. Let's see where I have it. We're gonna go there again. Let me minimize this. I want to show you this. So if you guys can't see this, this has gone to a different screen now that shows a comparative study of health status of children raised under the models of chiropractic versus allopathic medicine. If you guys can't see this, let me know now. I'm just going to continue moving forward. What they did, this is pretty old. This is back in summer of 1989, but they studied 200 pediatricians and 200 chiropractors, and they asked questions on how they raise their children, the choices that they make, health outcomes, because typically if you have chiropractors raising children, it tends to be a little bit different because we live in a different model than our counterparts, our medical doctors. And so I wanted to see chiropractic kids versus medical kids, what was the difference? And so analysis of results indicates a definite correlation between chiropractic care and superior health. While the medical children had a history of fewer childhood diseases, as they had considerably higher percentages of child immunizations, the chiropractic children showed 69% less otitis media, which is ear infections, while the medical children only had 20% ear infections pre-response or no ear infection. So the way to think about that is, 30% of chiropractic kids had ear infections, 80% of medical doctors' kiddos had ear infections. And it went on to say pediatricians were more likely to feel that every child would have a course of antibiotics at least one time because they anticipated 100% of children would have ear infections. That was their experience. So this goes on to just compare chiropractic kids versus medical kids and what they experience in terms of health, infections, hospital visits, those sorts of things. And I found it to be quite interesting in comparison. So never sought MD care, 42%, just under half. Only had MD care was almost 100% of our medical kids. Never used drugs, and they excluded antibiotics. I don't know why. 90%, 70% of MD kids never used drugs, excluding antibiotics. Never used antibiotics, 50%. Never used 10%, right? So you can look at these numbers and compare the differences between the upbringing. And I bring this up, yes, it is talking about kids, and guess what? If you are choosing chiropractic care, if you are in the chiropractic world, guess what? You're already making some of these similar lifestyle choices and changes than people who are not. You're here sitting in a workshop with me, learning about chiropractic and the safety pin model and how it relates to mainstream research and what we're finding out there, which will change the choices that you make moving forward, which is really wonderful and amazing. And you will be more open to maybe choosing different foods at the dinner table and maybe listening to different things or being open to listening to different things as it relates to health. I bring this up because when you are plugged into chiropractic, you tend to make different decisions. And as we saw with just comparing medical kids to chiropractic kids, maybe that was your upbringing, but you can change that. And development is driven by environment, alter the environment, alter the development. And, yes, your brain may be fully developed, but it is still adaptable and responsive and neuroplastic. And so you can still change that. And when you correct your subluxations, it alters your perception of how you experience your world. And one of my favorite quotes is, none of us see the world as it is. We all see the world as we are. Okay, so we're all looking at the world through a lens. So the more clear that lens is, the more we're actually experiencing the reality of the world. So moving on. And this is where I want to end, because I know I did a huge jump from talking about prenatal health to kid health, and now I'm going to the end, adulthood. There's a lot that happens. I can talk about the statistics of obesity in children, chronic disease in children. There's a lot out there, but I think this is worth a conversation, because this is where we're ending up if we don't shift the trajectory. Only 12% of American adults are metabolically healthy. I want you to sit with that for a second. 12%. That means 88%. That's almost 9 out of 10 people are metabolically unhealthy. So what is metabolic health? It is having optimal levels of 5 factors: healthy blood glucose or blood sugar levels, healthy triglycerides, healthy high density lipoprotein cholesterol, healthy blood pressure, healthy waist circumference. Almost 90% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And when you are metabolically unhealthy, that means you are at risk for chronic disease, period. Chronic disease being high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, PCOS, dementia. If there was a way to shift your trajectory, if there was a way to support your metabolic health now, so that in 5, 10, 30 years, you're not talking about these chronic diseases, you're not talking about dementia, do you think that could be life altering? Not just for you, but your family, for the family and extended family and your kiddos who have to take care of you make pretty serious decisions when it comes to your health? If you could alter that, would you? I'm telling you, it takes a lot of work. It takes responsibility. It takes deliberate effort, because when it comes to your wellness journey, it's happening. It's just, are you aware of it, and are you being intentional with your choices? We're all taking care of our body in ways. It's just that some of us are taking more responsibility and being more disciplined in how we take care of it. I think this is a scary number. You know, there's 5 of us on the call. That means 4 out of the 5 of us are metabolically unhealthy. That means 4 out of the 5 of us are on a trajectory to be labeled with one of these chronic diseases. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for my family. And so we are here to support you so that that isn't you, but understand it takes work. And I will leave you with this. So there's a really great way to do a quick metabolic health screening. These are, yes, I know that there are shapes in terms of the pear shape or the apple shape, but these tend to be pretty consistent no matter what when we look at the literature. So you have something called the waist-hip ratio. So the waist, you're going to go right at the belly button. Okay, you're going to measure that, and then you're going to right at the hips. And for women, that waist-hip ratio, if your waist is, we'll say 28 inches and your hips are 40 inches, you want that waist-hip ratio to be less than 0.8. For men, you want it less than 1. Waist height ratio, you want that at 50%. Okay, so if you are, I don't know, 60 inches tall, then you want your waist to be 30 inches or less. And then you have the waist circumference. So simply measuring what is your waist. Women, if it's less than or equal to 31.5 inches, men less than or equal to 37 inches, you're likely have a healthy metabolic, or you'd probably fall under the umbrella of metabolically fit or metabolically healthy. I think this is a great place to start to get your measurements and then continually take them over time to really evaluate lifestyle, activities, you know, your choices that you're making, because it's baseline. For 90% of us, almost 90% of us, these are all going to be outside the normal ranges. It's not a number that I need to know or anybody else needs to know. But I do think we need to understand that there's a way to just do a quick screening. And if you're outside of these, the likelihood of you showing or being unfit to a degree in terms of metabolic health is, you know, pretty high. And that means that puts you in the world of and being at risk for chronic disease. And when it comes to your wellness journey, I want more than that for you. A lot of people's wellness journeys end up, you know, what is it? The retirement years where we think we're going to live our lives, we're going to experience the world, we're going to have fun, we're going to, you know, adventure. I think that dream is not necessarily a reality when it comes to our health. And so my goal for you is you can't change what's happened in the past, but you can change everything moving forward. And you can be very deliberate about your wellness journey. And the fact that you are here and you're getting chiropractic, you're making that choice. And I think it's very honorable. And I appreciate that you're showing up. There are things that we can support you with as it relates to making different choices when it comes to your lifestyle. Workshops, we can't get into all of the stuff on your day-to-day visit. That's why we do workshops, and we cover all different categories. And I think at some point we will do a specific workshop on addressing metabolic health, but that is not today. It is just to dip your toe in. So I want to end here It is 6:15. I appreciate you being here. The big takeaway, we had somebody in here who was 9 years old today. And her mom brought her in because she was concerned about how she was processing things. Her kiddo was anxious, had some challenges with her social circle, feeling bullied. And she said, I heard you talk about the brain and heard you talk about how you process things, and maybe, her behavior is a window into the brain. So maybe there's something going on that chiropractic can help with. And as we were going through her chiropractic assessment, we noticed that there was a potential curve showing up in her spine. Now understand, she's at an age where she's still developing and growing. And if there's any type of lateral curve that's showing up, that could turn into a big deal down the road if that's not addressed. And we were just hiring somebody. We're going through interview processes, and the gal that came in said, my boyfriend has scoliosis. He's 6'5", 6'6". He's 19 years old and he cannot move. He's hunched and he's got such significant scoliosis. It's something that runs in his family. And I wish he would have gotten chiropractic care, 10, 12 years ago, or had somebody check him, because maybe his life would be different. And he's 19. I know I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I bring this up because when do you start your wellness journey? And if we can get our kiddos checked, if we can change the trajectory they're on, it's not a question of, man, I wish I would have known. I wish somebody would have told me. It's got to happen now. And so that's my challenge to you is, if you have friends, if you have family, if you're noticing anything that's not right, whether it's just postural, it's behavioral, whether it's symptoms, that's not normal. And yes, I'm talking kiddos, but I'm talking about all people. Just get them checked. That's our goal, for everyone to get checked. So I encourage you, I challenge you to bring your loved ones in. We would love to check them and support them. If they choose chiropractic or not, at least they are more informed, and they can choose in a deliberate way if they want to be a part of this world or not, whether it's now or 10 years from now. So I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Again, Dr. Maya Kinzigler of Monarch Family Chiropractic, and I will see you next time.